Hello and welcome back to the Facts of Facts, the only Facts of Life podcast that would like to write off this episode as business expense.
Yes.
Oof. Why? Why did we need to learn this fact?
I'd like you to tell me what you think the fact was.
Don't trust your rich dad.
Okay. But fair, which I think is actually a good one. I thought that the last line was very poignant, where Blair's dad shows up, gives her a check for her allowance, and then leaves. And then Joe walks in and is like, "What's that?" And Blair looks down at this check and just goes, "It's my father." Which I thought we could, that was very poignant, but we could have gotten to that he basically doesn't care about his daughter and only basically pays for her and uses her, rather than going through 24 minutes of tax fraud information.
This was probably the taxiest episode of a sitcom I've ever seen, and that includes every episode of Taxi.
I didn't know. I couldn't tell what was happening most of the time. And the crazy thing is that, so what was weird about this is that we started shock and horror in a new place. We started in the kitchen.
The fucking kitchen. I couldn't believe it.
Which is crazy. But
then
it's as though Azad Kalata was like, that tuckered him out, and he was like, okay, so the rest of the episode we're staying in the cafeteria.
Back to the cafeteria.
Just everything is happening in the cafeteria.
I said you get one scene out of the cafeteria. You wanted to start there, you started there. That's it, we're done. So anyway, as we said, Daddy's Girl, episode 8 of season 4. Can you believe we are 1/3 of the way through the season, Britt?
What?
Yeah, I feel like we just started this season.
1/3?
The way through the season.
I thought we were at least halfway.
Through the season?
Yeah.
No, we just hit the first third mark. So I'm excited because it only is uphill from here, more or less.
So you know what, Dominik? I'm gonna stop believing you when you say that, because every episode we finish, you're like, well, so this was a bad one. This one, okay, I'll admit this one wasn't so good. Yeah, this one did feel as though I would rather have root canal than rewatch this. This one was appalling.
I like this one.
It was about tax fraud.
Yeah, no, I didn't mind that. It was better than doing another one about sexual assault.
I would rather have more sexual assault than
Don't
tax fraud.
worry, it's coming. It's nice to mix it up every now and then. I've never seen an episode of a sitcom like this before. But let's get into our writers before we get into the episode. Daddy's Girl, directed by Azad Kalata, of course. Written by 2 Facts of Life newbies.
Yes.
The first one is Howard Myers. This is his only Facts of Life, however. He'll write a bunch of different strokes, I think, before and after this. Then he does 4 Small Wonders.
Okay. Did he do all the small wonders that were tax fraud related?
I would assume.
Okay.
That's his niche. He did a load of Who's the Bosses. Now, I'm sure you're not familiar with the sitcom, but there was a sitcom called Free Spirit, where this family got a nanny to watch their 13, 14, 12-year-old kids.
Wait, hold on. Was the nanny a ghost?
She was a witch.
Oh, yes. Okay, I have heard of that.
I loved that show. I thought it was weirdly super clever, and I remember going on vacation with my family when I'm going to say I was 11, and the whole time being like, oh my God, what if the VCR didn't record Free Spirit? The whole time. And it did. And now that ends up being the only episode I have, because I saved that VHS.
Good for you.
In my broom closet. I keep saying that my VHSs are in my broom closet. If I'm ever robbed and my broom closet is raided, then I'm going to know that it's one of these lovelies. It's one of these lovelies.
It was a long-time listener, first-time robber.
Yes. He did 6 Dear Johns. An Upper Hand, Three Nannies. I mean, if you're writing The Nanny, that's good. He did The Cosby Show, but not The Cosby Show. He did Cosby, which isn't as good as The Cosby Show. Hughley's, and his last IMDb credit is a Hannah Montana episode that I have been informed he may not have written.
Oh.
He may have written it, but it may have been rewritten. From what I understand, he was part of an early Hannah Montana room that was then abandoned and a new room formed. But, you know, this is all Hannah Montana lore, so who knows?
Well, but I assume that that's the incredibly famous episode of Hannah Montana where she gets audited by the IRS.
Yes, that is right. That is absolutely correct. It's Hannah Montana IRS. So, from what I understand, our other writer is slightly more famous.
Yes.
You guys might know him as the creator of Family Law. If not, you might know him as the creator of Walker, Texas Ranger, or Due South.
Yes.
He also made quite a few films he wrote. Like Crash, $1 Million Baby, a couple of James Bond films, Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace. But I believe he's best known for his Zach Braff romantic comedy, The Last Kiss. I am obviously talking about Paul Haggis.
Yes.
Probably one of the biggest successes to come from the Facts of Life writers' room.
Well, I was going to say, what about George Clooney?
Well, I was saying the writers' room.
Yeah,
yeah, no, there's a lot of successes that are to come. You're going to find a very, very young David Spade playing a fairly dramatic role here. It's weird, but that's not for a while. Anyway, also, unlike his co-worker or co-writer, what's his name, Howard Myers, Paul Haggis goes on to write 11 more episodes, and actually quite a few good ones. Paul Haggis started off writing cartoons that actually shaped the man that I've become. He wrote the Scooby-Doo Power Hour, Richie Rich, Heathcliff, the Plastic Man Comedy Adventure Show, and I watched all of those cartoons. And then, like so many of our writers on Facts of Life, he seems to have gotten funneled through the Love Boat to Different Strokes to One Day at a Time. Before finally landing here. It's really unusual how many people took that route.
True. It's also completely unusual for anyone who was working on this show to go on to work on James Bond movies.
That is true. That is true. He will write a single Who's the Boss episode, and then he slips into dramas after staying here at Facts of Life for much of the 80s. He'll go into dramas with 30-something, and then sketch comedy with Tracy Ullman. He does a bunch of LA Laws. What can he do?
Not this.
This is when he started creating shows. He created Due South, Walker, Family Law. Then Crash came out. He had a lot of success, and I looked into it. He hasn't worked much in the past decade.
Well, why should he? I mean, because, you know, when you can just rest on the laurels of, you know, widely beloved Oscar-winning film, Crash. You don't need to work another day in Hollywood because that wasn't a giant embarrassment for everyone involved.
Also, there were, I just want to be full disclosure with the lovelies here, there were some sexual assault allegations that were pinned against him in 2018, stemming from a case or a situation in 2013. But his fellow ex-Scientologist, Leah Remini, believes that he was set up by the church.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, who am I to disagree with sitcom royalty?
With Leah Remini.
Yeah,
exactly.
That being said, I'm staying out of it.
Yeah.
And so Scientologists, please don't at me.
Yeah.
Shall we start?
Yeah.
Are you mad at me that I brought you into this life of watching this show about tax returns and?
So ultimately, no, because again, as you know, the pandemic rages on. watching this show is a small glimmer of happiness in my life. And also the fact that I get to see you via Skype and, you know, hopefully entertain others with this nonsense gives me a nice feeling.
Oh, good.
But
Good.
I will say this about this episode. I felt as though I should have just been watching like a webinar that was posted by the IRS. This was so pointless and bizarre because so the lesson is that Blair learns is that her dad is kind of shifty, right? And doesn't love her that much. He's sort of like moneybags, right?
I think she knew that already.
Well,
she was
of course she knew that.
confronted with it.
But the way that we get to that lesson is completely weird.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dig into it.
Yeah.
So first of all, we do, as you mentioned, start in the kitchen. Oh my God.
I lost my mind. I literally wrote down just the kitchen.
Yeah, I wrote OMG. And Natalie goes and ruins this awesome moment for us by giving us an awful, awful opening line.
Yeah.
About how she loves doing inventory. There's nothing like spending your afternoon with 200 cans of chow mein. Which sent me down a wormhole. I did not know that you could buy canned chow mein, but you can. LaChoy makes it $4.49 at Target. Oh my God, that's gross.
I feel like, actually, you know what? I was going to say, I feel like we've discussed chow mein before on this show, but I think it was actually chop suey that we discussed. And that it's one of those very specific, but like American Chinese food, but also very regional. Like it's
Chinese
a weird
food.
Chinese food. But that like, I think you can get cans of chow mein.
Yeah,
also,
I know. I now know.
But the funny thing is that, sorry, can you just hold on for 1 second? My cat is on a thing that he should not be on.
Well, I'm just going to continue because I've learned that editing is a real pain in the ass.
No,
when
sorry.
we're doing
I just
the
wanted
video
to get my cat
podcast.
down. Anyway, no. So the funny thing is that like, you know, Natalie's like, ugh, I love, like, a very expository sentence saying, gosh, I love taking inventory. There's nothing like sharing your afternoon with 200 cans of chow mein, which isn't a joke.
No, I just wrote that's not good.
And also I wrote, you know, really, like, you know, spending time with cans is like my favorite activity.
Well,
I mean,
especially
these two cans right here.
That's
but I will actually, the funniest thing is that reminded me of, so you've seen the movie Speed, I take it.
Many, many times. We're talking Speed 2 Cruise Control, right?
No.
The good one?
The original. The worst one. The first one.
Oh, okay, yeah. That one.
There's a moment which is very memorable, when Sandy B, your favorite actress, is, of course, driving the bus, right? And can't stop when this woman who's pushing a baby carriage into the street, and then she hits the baby carriage.
And it's all cans
Sandy
everywhere.
Sandra Bullock goes crazy with, like, sheer horror that she just murdered a baby. Which, I mean, fair enough. She sells it. I would also freak out like that. And everyone is freaking out. The carriage just goes spinning in the air. Just like, and it's like, oh, well, the baby's definitely dead. And then it comes crashing down. Keanu Reeves looks back, and it's just all of these cans that this homeless lady has collected to presumably recycle to get, you know, a little bit of money, right? And Keanu Reeves has this wonderful line reading where he just looks it back, and he smiles, he sort of chuckles, he goes, "It's just cans. It's just cans. It's just cans." And that is the first thing I thought of as soon as Natalie said, "I love spending my afternoon with cans."
Very specific memory. I do remember that moment, and it was super intense and stuff. I just didn't remember Keanu's line delivery, but he's good with those.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Garrett also has a terrible joke about how she forgot how many cans of chow mein she ordered, but that's the thing about Chinese food. A half hour later, you forget what you ordered.
That, again, casual racism, but not what they're trying to go for. That's
Well,
not
I
the
mean,
joke.
the classic sitcom joke was always when you eat Chinese food,
You're
30 minutes
hungry
later
half an
you're
hour
hungry
later.
again. Yeah. So I guess that's how they went. Is that racist?
Well,
That colloquialism? I just figured that meant like you don't get hearty portions at a Chinese restaurant. Now I disagree about that personally. I think you'd get lots at Chinese restaurants, but I always assumed that was what they were basically saying.
but they're not saying that. They're saying when that's a problem with Chinese food. Half an hour later, you forgot what you ordered.
But that's not what I'm saying. I'm asking if you think that colloquialism is racist.
So it is built. It is built with racism, and that there was a lot of anti Chinese food stuff in in the 80s around like MSG and the use of MSG in Chinese food. So it was always like Chinese food gives me a headache, whereas that was proven to not actually be the case. I looked this up about Chinese food and whether or not you stay hungry. But and
I've actually studied this for
yourself?
decades.
Yeah.
By eating Chinese food until I was full, literally every time I've eaten Chinese food.
Yeah.
So I know that there's no truth to it, but
Anyway,
maybe
what I read
in the 80s, the Chinese food made you hungrier, which to me makes me hungrier. Thinking of a food that like in that in defending your life, where you can eat and eat and you never get full.
Yeah.
That's what it makes me think of. Chinese version of that.
This delicious, the fact that we're discussing all of these cans of chow mein is making you hungry.
No, but imagining 80s Chinese food filled with MSG designed to make you hungry 30 minutes after you eat it so you get to eat the leftovers. That's making me hungry.
Okay.
Anyway, Mrs. Garrett's shoulders do this weird wiggle when she tells that joke. It's like a long joke.
It was a long wiggle.
So she had to do like a long shimmy and it was weird. There's a couple of like really weird moments in this episode that are totally down to direction.
Direction and lack of anything to say. Like it was like, keep stretching, like walk slower as you leave the scene. Like it was like
that's fine by me when I'm doing these notes because I just feel like I'm pausing it so much. So when like they go like 20 seconds without speaking, that saved me like a half hour of thought.
Fair enough.
A half hour of thought is a lot of effort for me these days.
Yeah.
And so Blair walks by holding a box.
A tiny little box, and then she's like, phew, God, I can't even believe it. Like, woo, I'm tired after doing all this menial labor. I can't believe that, I really feel for those people who have to do all that physical labor.
Weak sauce. Everybody's like, hey, I've got a shitty line to say, except for Tootie. She gets no lines. And
no, but here's the other great thing is that I was like, she's like, I really feel for all those people who have to do hard physical labor. And all I wrote down was, yeah, me too, Blair, which is what watching this fucking show is for me.
I enjoyed this one. I didn't like love this one, but I loved how weird it was and like who are you doing this for, you guys? And like, is this really how you think an IRS agent acts, you guys? And like, wow, you're really going there with how awful Blair's dad is. Like, there was like a handful of weird ingredients in the general sauce of this episode that made it like not like a car crash, but definitely like I can't turn away because what is going on? And like we're in our 4th season of the show, and in my head,
figured this shit out. They should have figured this shit out. They really
should have figured this out. And they will next season. Oh, it's
figured
out.
Yeah. Anyway, no. So the weird thing is that it's like, and I get the lesson, which is Blair is constantly talking about how amazing her dad is, and he's such a great businessman, and Warner Textiles is it's just we're constantly going to Geneva, and he's in Dubai, and blah blah blah, and he's just such a great businessman, and it's like. I get the point of basically the lesson of he is actually kind of a dirtbag who ignores you and pays you off for your love. That's a perfectly good sitcom-ish lesson. But the fact that he uses his daughter as a like shell corporation to keep his business afloat.
What is really funny is that my father's an accountant. And one of my friend's fathers had to go to my father years ago and be like, hey, so I did exactly the same thing. So he put my friend, his child, in with all of these shell corporations and loan outs and like a fake job and the whole 9 yards. And I remember we were on a family vacation, me and my dad and my mom and my sister, in Las Vegas. And my friend's father was calling him, and my dad, I've never heard my dad yell at somebody before in my life. And he was like, why did you do that? That's terrible. That's such a stupid, like in the hotel room being like, it'll just be 2 more minutes, and then like screaming at my friend's father. So the whole time I remember being like, holy shit, this is exactly like that episode of Facts of Life. I was prepared for this, and it doesn't blow my mind because of that episode of Facts of Life. However, I didn't need to be. I could have just been like, wow, that's nuts.
Yeah.
It's a very weird episode, but it just happens to be the case that I know somebody that this happened to. But still, yeah, no, this is crazy. Crazy. So Joe finally gets a line. She thinks they ordered too much ketchup. 30 more cartons this month. That's too much. How much ketchup does a person need, she asks. And it should be said that this ketchup is supposedly feeding an amount of girls that can consume 200 cans of chow mein. So immediately the premise of Joe's question is false. But regardless, it's only there to support Blair's quite accurate sentiment that ketchup use is tied directly to income, which I basically agree with. The more money you have, the less ketchup you use. I think that's pretty accurate. Unless you're a Beverly Hillbilly.
I disagree.
Or AKA New Money.
No, I disagree. I mean, of course I understand the joke around, like we were so poor that we had to eat, ketchup soup and if you're poor and you like to eat hamburgers and ketchup on that, and we couldn't afford pasta sauce, so we had ketchup on our noodles, whatever. But I mean, this is also ignoring the fact that Blair is ignoring the blatant fact, which is I'm sure she eats a lot of shrimp cocktail, and ketchup is the main component of cocktail sauce.
That is quite possible, but I don't know that she eats as much ketchup as one who has ketchup soup.
Yeah, of course not. But I'm just saying that
she didn't say no.
She's ignoring.
She said the amount is tied to income. Anyway, we learned that this ketchup is a ruse. Mrs. Garrett has added more and more ketchup, 30 more boxes this month, as a decoy to justify the spending for actual fruits and vegetables. She's working the system.
So, okay. So here's the thing. So why do you think that this is a whole ketchup refrain?
Oh, it's obvious.
Yes.
Mrs. Garrett is just as bad as Blair's father, and cheating is never good, no matter if you're doing it for benevolent reasons or selfish ones.
Right. Sure. But why are we so hung up on the word ketchup?
No, it's my least favorite food.
That's true, it is. And also beans. You hate beans.
I hate beans, but I'd fuck with a bean before I'd fuck with a packet of ketchup.
Okay, but do you know why we're talking about ketchup? It's 1982.
No, please enlighten me.
Okay. So here's why. So Mrs. Garrett is going to juggle the books to hide the fact that she wants all this ketchup. She's labeling it ketchup on her budget, right? So that she can earmark that money for all this ketchup so as to be able to purchase healthy fruits and vegetables for the girls, right? But those are too expensive for Mr. Parker. But if it's earmarked as ketchup, he's like, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, take the money. Take all the ketchup money you need. That's fine. The reason this is such a buzzword and this is so important is because the Reagan administration, right around the time that this was written, was classified ketchup as a vegetable.
Yes, I do remember this. I do. In fact, I've read a British newspaper from the 80s that was talking about how hilarious and outrageous this was.
Yes. So, okay. So what was amusing was, so first of all, Reagan, Reagan era was all about like deregulation and, figuring out the deficit, but it was all about also, they wanted to update the USDA wanted to update this federal budget for school lunches, right? So if they get federal money, they have to provide X number of lunches for various types of students. It was basically a like, no student should go hungry type scheme. Anyway, I think it was started, I don't know, like FDR. Like it was started really early in the mid 20th century. And it was also like a very well-meaning thing where it was like, this is going to be the only square meal that some poor kids get, right? And then cut to 80s Washington and Reagan, right? And they're like, what we should get rid of? Like, let's cut the budget for school lunches, right? And so they reclassified things as vegetables, like ketchup and whatever, so as to be able to spend money on expensive fresh fruits and vegetables. But this probably would have been ignored. Like it's like, who gives a shit about the USDA? No one was covering this, but they managed to create their own fucking PR disaster by stepping on their fucking dick by announcing this cut to the federal school lunch budget, announcing that the same day that they announced that the White House purchased brand new china and place settings with the presidential seal in gold for $200,000. Then it was like, we need these plates. We need these very expensive, almost $250,000 worth of plates for visiting dignitaries. But we literally, and where we're finding that money? Oh, we're not giving kids apples and oranges. We're giving them ketchup on bread. It was just like, no one would have paid any attention. Anyway, it became a big meme.
When did he buy the jelly beans?
That he loved the jelly beans way before the White House.
But when did he buy a bunch for the White House? That was a thing, right?
Yeah, it was a thing. I'm sure he put that into the ketchup budget. I don't know.
Okay. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if it was alongside this. It was just like, ketchup is a vegetable. I'm spending $1 million on jelly beans and plates. Anyway, so everyone seems totally cool with the fact that Mrs. Garrett is cheating the system. Everybody. I really expected Tootie to be like, "You're lying," shocked face, but we don't even give Tootie that many lines this episode.
I know. But the funny thing about this is that with the lines that they do give Tootie, they give her weird ones where she's like, my parents do a lot of tax law. So in this case, I actually think you're probably going to go to jail. Like she gets these very mean, weird things that like, oh,
they're not mean. Our parents are lawyers. They know.
No, of course, but it's like it's very much in the Tootie spirit of being a sociopath, being like, your dad's going to jail. I'm positive.
I think all the time about the bad review that we have where somebody said these people call Tootie a social path. That's just, it just makes me happy. Anyway, so so instead, Joe's like, cool, can we like do you lying faster? Because
can we juggle the budget faster?
Tomorrow. I've got a ball game tomorrow with my dad, and I am worried that I'm going to be doing the budget nonstop for 36 hours and will be unable to attend this ball game. Come on, they're gonna let you go to the ball game. Like, what are you talking about? And besides, if they don't, you can blackmail her. Now you know she's cheating, the system at school. That's the Bronx way, right? But no, apparently the Bronx way is fighting with crowds and throwing things at the umpire and screaming expletives in front of your daughter at a ball game shortly after leaving prison. Perfect day out with dad.
Normal. I mean, that's how I am with my dad. My dad, who loves sports. I don't think I've ever been to a sporting event with my father unless he came to one of my like little league softball matches. Like,
but he was cursing and throwing things at the umpire, right?
Oh, always.
Good. Blair does not need to worry about, I only have a day and a half before my date with my dad. She's just like, I'm piecing out now.
No, I know. And she's like, I gotta go. So I just dropped off this tiny little box. And now I gotta go because this man is coming to meet me. I have a date with a man. And everyone's like, who is it? And she's like, very coy. She's like, oh, it's just this man from the IRS.
And then Tootie loudly gets a line, which I loved, going, the Internal Revenue Service?
and then Natalie, is this where Natalie is just like, she's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Are you kidding me?
She was like, her palms are already sweating. Yeah, that's
like,
the minute that this is mentioned, Natalie is riled up. She's riled up for the entire episode. She had one moment where she was like, I'm annoyed because I'm with cans of chow mein. And then from then on, she's like, I'm freaked out. I'm freaked out for you. You're going to jail. I don't even want to know you. If I touched your papers, I might be going to jail. Get the fuck away from me. Hey, did you notice there's a deer's ass on my sweater?
Yes. I actually wrote down, I thought this was actually a very fetching sweatshirt. This grapefruit-hued, big, boxy sweater that has a giant circle in it with a giant elk's ass on it.
That was a weird choice.
It was a choice.
It was definitely a choice. Anyway, we'll get more to that, I'm sure. So anyway, the IRS man has some questions for her about her tax return that Blair's father prepared, and she simply signed. Daddy takes care of everything like that for her.
No, and that was the funniest
part. With a fake job, we learned.
But that's the funniest thing is that Mrs. Garrett's like, you have a tax return? You don't even have a job.
Yeah, meanwhile, you're doing fucking inventory for a school's where you have a job. Yeah. You have a job. Mrs. Garrett is trying to gaslight you into believing that you are not working, but you're working constantly.
But I was very confused by this. I was like, also, like, I don't, like, the oddness of this is that, like, I feel like Blair could have been filing in with her family. You know, it's not like she's Selena Gomez and it's like, you know, a 14-year-old who's, you know, independent from her family who needs to file her own, you know, tax
she's
return.
Blair fucking Warner. I think her hair maintenance alone was probably a write-off just for existing.
Much like Trump's, where it was sort of, it's like $400,000 worth of hair care.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a science project, so who knows how that's made. Anyway, so Daddy employs her with a fake job as fashion consultant to write off her allowance. In her circles, it's done practically every day whenever they're not building hate crime libraries, Joe reminds her.
No, I know. And so this is the great thing is that it's like, so we learn a lot about Blair is that so her grandfather was like the Grand Dragon in the Ku Klux Klan. And Blair's father is like Bernie Madoff. It's like this it's this weird thing where she's like constantly, like, I get the constant comeuppance of Blair is that she constantly is being humiliated because she thinks she's so perfect and everything's great in her family. But like, oh, you know, even hot women get breast cancer too, you know? And like, my dad apparently loves his money and his business more than he loves me, which is not clear from this episode. It's clear that he's like if it's sort of like how Trump says, it's like, if you pay your full taxes, you're a chump. It's like, it's like if Blair's
that does
dad,
seem to be like the subtweet of this episode.
But if it's like, if Blair's dad and she go to like Geneva or they go to Hawaii or whatever for, you know, a weekend for her birthday, and they talk about business for 5 minutes, it technically can be written off.
I agree. I think there's some really, really strange motives, I want to call them, for emotion. I don't know. You know what is also strange is one of the boxes is listed as pizza topping mix.
Oh.
Yes.
There was also another one which was just like gravy.
I missed that one, but I was fascinated by pizza topping mix.
Yeah, which clearly like the prop people were like, we're gonna go to town. We got all these jars, we got all these cans, we got all these boxes. Let's. We're starting in the kitchen. Oh my God! Call the police. We need like backups into how many of these boxes of weird goods we need. But also, the funniest thing. So last week was Thanksgiving. I know. We're posting these in later. But the funniest thing is that, so as I said, like I can sometimes hear as we're all working from home and everything, sometimes I can overhear snippets of like my husband's work calls, and I think they were having a work call that was like right after Thanksgiving, and they were like, everyone was sort of like regrouping, being like, how was your Thanksgiving? Oh, mine was really good. It was very quiet. It was super nice, blah, 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 but like they were introducing a couple new people to the team, and like as an icebreaker, I think their leader was basically like, so can everyone just go around and like talk about like who, what your name is, what your role is, and your favorite thing to eat at Thanksgiving. And like some people were like, oh, like one person was like, oh, well, I like to keep it simple. Like I love mashed potatoes. That's like my favorite thing. And like, and another person was like, oh my God, no, I'm all about the stuffing. Like I love stuffing that has like chestnuts in it. And then one other person was like, oh, I really love, I have a sweet tooth. I'm here for the pumpkin pie only. And one person was just like gravy. This is just a way of getting the gravy into me. And it's just like, yeah, I get it. I mean, right?
I am not a huge gravy person, but I do like drippings.
Okay. So, but you can see how, like, that's the thing about Thanksgiving food, is that it tends to be receptacles or sponges to move the gravy from the plate into the mouth. The turkey is bland, the mashed potatoes is bland, the stuffing is bland, but the gravy is why we're here. So I thought that person actually, hit the nail on the head about that.
My stuffing is not bland.
Okay.
I do Ritz cracker stuffing, and it's my favorite. I make it like 20 times a year because I want it all the time.
Ritz crackers.
Yes, you take a couple of onions and saute them with butter, and then you throw in an entire box of crushed Ritz crackers and some chicken broth or vegetable broth, and you can put like celery and carrots, and it comes up with its own flavor. It's just its own thing that they've been making it since like the late 1800s. Apparently, it was my great grandma's recipe. Very, very simple, and I love it.
That's basically like matzo brie. That has egg in it, though.
Yes, but this is like a big poofy, like in a souffle dish, okay. And you scoop out a big bloop of it. Anyway. Yes, let's get out of this. So Mrs. Garrett Needles, she needs to know how much Blair's allowance is.
Which, again, is an inappropriate question. But then Blair, of course, tells them. She's like, well, you shouldn't ask. And then she's like, well, yeah, I get $10,000. And then everyone's like, what? And Joe's like, a year? She's like, no, I'm not a poor like you. A month. And I was like, I literally wrote down, what is she spending this money on?
I wrote that too.
At boarding school.
Yeah, and she wears the same 4 outfits all the time. Like I've seen her wear the same outfit before.
Is it?
Do you know?
Is it her hair?
It has to be. Do you know what the equivalent of $10,000 a month is now from 1982?
$22,000. $40,000. $30,000.
$27,000. What the living fuck does she do with that money? Like, all her food is free. Her living expenses is free. She doesn't drive. Where is she going? To the Peekskill Mall?
No, I think
buying the mall.
She's just wiping her ass with $100 bills.
Anyway, Natalie is similarly outraged. Apparently, Blair wouldn't lend her money for the movies, but we learned she doesn't get most of it. But you got some of it. How much of the movies?
I know.
It's totally like.
But again, yeah, like it's 1982. How much were the movies? 10 cents?
I mean, like probably 250, but like
Yeah, like when I was a tot, when I would go to the movies, I remember it being like $5, and that was in the late 80s.
yeah. So we learned that she doesn't get much of the money. It gets tucked away in a bank for her to be fabulously wealthy later on in life. When she's in college living above a croissant shop.
Yeah.
Mrs. Garrett cautions Blair that the IRS is no fucking joke, and Tootie know-it-alls because her parents are lawyers.
I wrote down that Tootie comes in with like legal advice about, because her family are lawyers who deal with tax fraud all the time. And that's when I wrote down that this is where I fell asleep for a few hours. I literally turned this off to go do something else. I was like, this is going to be about taxes? Like, come on.
Nat says that Blair should move to another country because that's exactly what her father has already decided to do. He's in Nigeria. Nothing sus about that. So
No,
Blair hasn't had a chance
that
to
was
chat
my
with him
question.
yet.
I was like, was this a thing in the 80s? Like, like the Nigerian prince email schemes that like, from the 90s where like our grandmothers were being like, oh, if you email me your bank details, I'll give you $100,000 because I'm a Nigerian prince. Were these going on via mail in 1982?
Well, I assume that David Warner was in Nigeria setting up the whole Nigerian prince situation. The internet was just starting to come about, and he was like, "We can network computers, and we can take." So that's what I believe David Warner's. That's what Warner Industries is. It's a bunch of Nigerian princes. Anyway, Mrs. Garrett wisely suggests that maybe Blair wants to postpone the IRS meeting until she gets a chance to talk to her dad. But I think it's just a ruse to get her to keep going on with the inventory.
It's so weird. She's like, and then like the way that Blair is acting is that she's sort of like, she's treating this like a date. She's like, I gotta go get on my like cute outfit because the tax man is coming.
Yeah, the operative word is man.
Man. And then they're all sort of like, I was like, is she gonna suck his dick? What's gonna happen next? What is this?
That's 100% what she was saying. She's got charm, wit, superior intelligence, which sounds kind of Nazi-ish to me, but letting that slide. Blair says the operative word is man in tax man, and she is going to blow him until he doesn't press charges on her father.
Yeah.
And we're out of that scene. That was nice.
No.
We're now in the cafeteria. And
what are we still doing? We're still taking inventory. Tootie is loudly counting cranberry jars, whatever. And Joe just yells at her, being like, can you count somewhere else? Like,
why does she have to count like
out
she
loud?
Just hit in that? Not even just out loud. Out loud is 1, 2, 3. She was going 1 can of cranberries, 2. Like she was counting like the Count from Sesame Street. I'm with Joe on this one.
I agree, but again, this is an episode that gave gave no one anything to do. No one had anything to do.
Blair. You know who did? Mr. Garfield. He had lots to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Joe's disdain for Tootie is worth the inane counting bit. Once Tootie starts counting sweet potato cans out loud, Joe's like, I'm done. She stands up, she gives her pad to Mrs. Garrett and goes, I've had it. Not I'm finished, just Tootie is so fucking annoying, I cannot complete this task. And Mrs. Garrett nods with like yes, I know.
She laughs. She goes, okay, yeah, I got it.
Yeah. I don't blame you.
It's like, here's the thing. It's like Mrs. Garrett is, presumably the adult in charge, right?
Presumably,
right?
Presumably is the operative word.
She could go up to Tootie and say, Tootie, can you just do that slightly quieter? And
to yourself?
Yeah. But she's just like, Joe, she just acknowledged, she's like, Joe's just like, yeah, I know. It's really annoying.
Yeah. She's lucky I didn't smash her head in with the can. But she does have that smooth helmet of Tootie hair. And then Blair comes in. Her boobs are lower than they've ever been.
I didn't notice it because
They were so low.
Well, I didn't notice it because of the incredibly fetching 2 scarves that she brought in with her.
Yeah, well,
Basically
she
saying,
needs Mrs. Garrett's advice. She's never met with the IRS before, so how much areola should she show? And Mrs. Garrett's like,
none.
I'm all areola.
Actually, I do feel like Mrs. Garrett has really big areolas.
Yeah, no, me too. That's why I said.
And you know, and as Blair says about these scarves that she can't choose between, it's either pink or rust. I feel like Mrs. Garrett has very much rust colored areolas, and Blair's are pink.
I think you're right. And I think that Natalie's
or black. No, all of this is in service.
Not what I was going to say, but sure.
All of this is in service for this very bad joke that Natalie makes. So Blair comes in being like, Mrs. Garrett, I need your advice. Which scarf should I wear? Which scarf should I wear?
And Mrs. Garrett is like, what?
Yeah. And then Natalie's like, she's like, whoa. You're going to need a black one.
Over your eyes.
Over your eyes.
That is how fuck Steve likes to do me.
No, because they're going to execute her. And it's
oh, yes, I know.
And it's like, why is this 14-year-old girl so terrified of the IRS? What does she think? Is she Al Capone? What does she think
so
is
weird.
Happen?
It is so weird. A cute couplet alert, though. I enjoyed this. Tootie says, Nat's paranoid. Not every agent is out to get her. And Natalie says, I know this one's out to get Blair. Bump. I liked that. That was cute. Blair's got a whole plan. Tootie's making coffee. Natalie will serve. And there will, of course, be Mrs. Garrett's famous strudel. But Mrs. Garrett's like, this isn't a tea party.
Yeah, this is an audit. This is an IRS audit.
Yeah, she says he's not going to be interested in her strudel. But honestly, everybody who encounters her strudel is very interested. And we learn Mr. Garfield is no exception.
He loved it.
He ate it in such a gross way.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about this man.
Okay, we'll get there. Anyway, I wonder if they told all, like, oh, you're a new writer, so here's what you need to know. Blair is rich, shows dyke. You don't need to bother with Tootie and Natalie. They just say whatever you want. And Mrs. Garrett makes amazing strudel. Those are the things that you need to put in the show.
Yeah. And then everyone's like, oh, okay. So
I feel like they had a whiteboard with the word strudel with just a bunch of like crazy lines written so that it connects to every episode. How do we get strudel in each one?
Yes. Yeah. And then so the people who wrote this were just like, they're like, okay, got it. Got the download. So what you're saying is we're going to center a whole episode around tax fraud. And the executives were like, yes.
As long as you can get strudel in there, yes.
We don't give a shit.
I wonder if they were like, we're building towards something here. One day she's going to own a strudel shop.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I sidebar, how have you been enjoying the strudel that I've made for you?
Oh, I got another delicious strudel from Mrs. Lundborg. I got, this one was persimmon. It was absolutely delicious. And it has tasted like Christmas apples.
It did.
And yeah, I quite adored it. Thank you. I'm so glad the Facts of Life has gotten you into strudel making because I get to be into strudel eating.
Yeah. I feel as though there's going to be many, many, many more strudels in your future.
Heyo. So Blair plans on talking to the IRS guy at his level and then twisting the poor sap around her finger, and then she wiggles her pinky finger so long, like way too long. Yeah. Like they could have edited out so much, so to the point where the IRS guy enters
and she's still wiggling it.
And then he asks for Blair. He asks Natalie for Blair. Still has it up. And then Blair turns around, still up, and then she waves to him by wiggling with it. It's a cute bit, edited horrifically. Anyway,
well, as we've said, the direction on this show is, is poor to bad.
But he'll find his footing. Blair introduces herself to Mr. Garfield quite coquettishly, and he smiles, which shocks Natoots. Natalie thinks he could even get fired for that. I thought that was cute. No.
But so again, in comes this dude who does look not like what I would expect an IRS auditor to look like.
Amazing suit, however.
So here comes this dude who looks sort of like if Michael Shannon ate a lot of strudel.
He's not even fat, this guy.
No, but Michael Shannon has those beady eyes and looks a little menacing.
So just Michael Shannon.
Who's Michael Shannon?
No, I said so just Michael Shannon.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, but plus a couple strudels. Anyway, here this guy comes in and he's wearing the craziest like car salesman sports coat. It's all the colors. It's beige, it's brown, it's blue, it's green, it's yellow. Then he's wearing a tie that's both blue and brown. Also, the tie is short and fat.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's wearing like child predator glasses. He's wearing those he looks like the sort of man that should run away from. And she's treating this like, oh, you want to talk business? Sit right down.
I feel like the costume designer probably got the script and it said like wearing an ugly tie and like 5 years ago's latest trend in business suits or something, because it really is like out of like 1977. His look. Like it's
weird.
Such a choice.
Yeah, and then Mrs. Garrett's like, come girls, come, we have work to do, and then shuffles everyone off stage. And then Blair's basically like, okay, so are you gonna unzip your pants first, or should I do it with my teeth?
She says, let's sit down and so we get to know each other. And I think it's time to get to know the actor that plays Mr. Garfield. All right. So he is played by veteran character actor Kenneth. I'm going to say Tigar. It's like Tiger, but instead of an E, there's an A. What do you think? Tigar?
Tigar.
Kenneth Tigar. That was my Tigger impression.
Yeah, I know.
Just in case somebody was like, wow, he has a weird laugh. This guy works like nobody's business. He started in 75 with The Happy Hooker, and his career just took off from there. I cannot stress how many things he's been in. Over 150 things.
Are you gonna list all of them like you should in an IRS audit?
Well, I'm gonna say this. He played 6 different characters on 6 different episodes of Barney Miller.
Oh, okay.
He played 3 different characters on 3 different episodes of Lou Grant. And right before this, he played Spinkus on Bosom Buddies. And right after this, he played a doctor on Knight Rider. What can't this guy do?
He was, I'll be honest, the best part of this episode. He was creepy and weird and oddly written and, perverted.
Well, I don't know that he was perverted, but I mean, like, if he was even a little bit perverted, I feel like he would have plucked from the apple tree that Blair's branches were dangling before him. But I will say this. He was in Just One of the Guys, and he was in Just the 10 of Us. He was in Heart to Heart, and he was in Simon and Simon. He was in Webster, and he was in Different Strokes. He was in Lethal Weapon 2 and Phantasm 2. He was in Alf, Newhart, Amen, Murphy Brown, Fresh Prince. He still currently working. He's got multiple credits for 2020, and he just finished a run on The Blacklist, and he was in a bunch of House of Cards and The Man in the High Castle. This guy never friggin' stops.
Good for him.
Yeah. So if you liked his performance here, know that
there's
Hollywood
a lot more
kind of recognized him, and there's a lot for you to enjoy in other cinematic and television adventures.
So the funny thing is that so you
Did
texted
I say his
me.
name? Oh yeah, Kenneth Cigar.
Yeah. So the funny thing is that you texted me when you were watching this, and I hadn't watched it yet, and you said, "This episode introduces a character, a running character that we'll see a lot," or you said we'll see him infrequently, but he is he's a regular.
Yeah.
And so I immediately assumed it was this IRS guy.
Oh, you must have been so hopeful.
I was like, I really hope it's this guy. I hope that he follows the trail of money to Blair's dad. Like, I want this to be a multiple, like, I want this to be like a 10 episode arc. Like, I want the rest of the season to just be about this man auditing Warner Textiles.
Oh no, the rich man always gets away with it.
And
it's done.
Not only Warner Textiles, but the cannery in Guam and the pig farm in Kansas.
We'll get to those. So yes, they get right to it. He says that she's listed as a fashion consultant. Blair says one must do what one does best. Sure. Mm-hmm. And then he asks what a fashion consultant does. She bluffs fairly decently, saying that, one instead of I. But otherwise, everything that she said was fine.
Yeah.
Maybe that was like a legal loophole she was trying to get out of. Like, if I just say one, then I haven't lied to the IRS. I just said one follows the trends. I didn't say I do. She quickly tries to change the subject to how similar they are. They both work for relatives. Him, Uncle Sam, her daddy.
Ew.
Yeah, it was gross. Every time she said daddy, I was like, ooh, I don't like it. He asks about the money deducted for clothes. He wants the receipts. She threw them away, but she's happy to model one of the outfits for him.
Yeah.
So it goes over great. Lots of spinning. Why are his teeth like that?
I don't know.
Do you think he got them fixed?
Maybe.
I should have looked into that for the podcast.
About his teeth?
Yeah, watched one of his Blacklist episodes and checked out his chompers. They're crazy.
So they are crazy. But so he's like, I want to know about all this clothing that you wrote off. Do you have the receipts? And she's like, oh, and he's like, you lost them? And, plausible, like, she's like, heavens, no. I threw them out. The audience treats this like a joke. This is a punchline.
It's funny. I remember this episode. I remember well because my dad was an accountant. So I'd heard about the IRS. So this was filling in some puzzle pieces.
Accountant representation. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I just remember being like, am I supposed to be keeping every one of my receipts for everything I buy? Just in case this happens to me. Blair's just a girl at school. She doesn't even have parents there to be like, whoa, don't interrogate my daughter. Like, this could happen to me.
Yeah. This is why this is so crazy also that she's like, it's like Blair is this sort of dum-dum where it's like literally everyone says things that are very sane. Like, maybe you shouldn't be trying to, have a date with the guy that's coming to audit you. Maybe you shouldn't be signing your own tax return when you're 16 years old. Maybe you shouldn't be, maybe you should consult with your dad before you speak to this person on the record, a man who works for the federal government. And Blair's like, waves them all away like, I don't know. I can handle my shit. This is fine. And it's not. It's crazy.
It is. It's as crazy as his teeth.
So also, speaking of crazy, did you watch The Undoing?
No.
So that's
I want to, so please don't spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil anything. But one of the so that's the show with Nicole Kidman married to Hugh Grant, and a bad thing happens. Oh,
a bad thing happens.
A bad thing happens, and they're this very rich, privileged couple in New York. It's basically like, New York's version of Big Little Lies. Like, a bad thing happens, and then it's like,
Big Apple Little Lies?
Exactly. Anyway, one of the deep pleasures of The Undoing is Nicole Kidman is basically sort of like Blair in this, in that she's unbelievably rich and makes a lot of poor decisions. And a lot of them being like she's rich enough that she would never be interrogated by police without having a lawyer present. But that's kind of what Blair is doing right now. You know, where she's like, of course I can deal with the IRS. Yeah, I can handle this for daddy. I know how business works. And it's like, Blair, don't speak to anyone without your lawyer present.
Yes, absolutely true. Just keep spinning away, modeling your outfit, and try to spin back into the kitchen and get out of this. He's more interested in her miscellaneous equipment, which sounds like a euphemism if I've ever heard one.
Oh my God, it was so hilarious. And then she's like, equipment. And then he's like, yeah, the TV set. And I had to run this back a few times to understand what she said.
It was the TV set. That one must keep au courant.
She said, yes, one must keep. I was like, what? She's like, one must keep
au courant. Au courant. That's French for black currant. So yeah, but there's more equipment. There's the Xerox machine, there's the Telex machine, and the computer terminal.
Yeah.
She doesn't have much explanation for those, and she doesn't even remember where she put them.
So, and she's like, so to tell you the truth, and then this guy being like, you threw him away? Wink, wink.
Yeah, because he was awesome.
Yeah. And she's like, no.
But then he's like,
why would I throw away my equipment? They keep using the word equipment, which also is just, why would, like, just hearing Blair say equipment over and over again is absolutely bizarre.
I enjoyed it. That was one of the joys of this episode. This scene was delightful. And then he's like, maybe you lease them to your father's company with an option to purchase and share the depreciation. I don't know why she's like, the answers.
She's like,
yeah, and then we cut. I would love to know how she responded to that question, but we cut to the kitchen where Natoots are listening, and Natalie points out that this is where he goes in for the kill. Why does she know so much about this?
Also, what does she give a shit? Why does she care?
She dresses like she has no idea how the world works. I will wear a deer's ass on my giant pink sweater, and then meanwhile, the IRS comes and she's like, okay, I know the ins and outs of this situation. But if there's a need to invent an abortion, she's right there. However,
but Tootie as well. She's like, oh yeah, she's gonna go to the clink. Like this isn't looking good.
Tootie, I at least understand. Her parents are lawyers. She might have seen some of this happen. I can justify it with, like, she said, my parents defended these cases. It could be somebody that she knew. It could be like it was my uncle Pootie. I just didn't want to tell you guys because I'm embarrassed. Anyway, so Mrs. Garrett chastises the girls for listening to other people's private conversations. But then as soon as Natalie lifts this weird window into the cafeteria that I feel like we haven't seen since the chef was in town, that was fucking Mrs. Garrett. Mrs. G's all in on snooping. So then we're back to the audit. And Mr. Garfield says that a major problem was the lack of lasagna.
Yes.
Also, where's the coffee and the strudel?
Hasn't come out yet. They're
really
preparing it. They're preparing it.
Are they? They're snooping.
They're snooping. I know. But so then it's not only is it that Blair has lost the receipts, thrown out the receipts for the clothes, right?
Yes, there are discrepancies with her Keogh plan. You knew that was going to come up in a Facts of Life episode at some point.
Obviously. But so she lost the receipts for the clothes. She doesn't know exactly where the receipts are for the miscellaneous equipment.
She doesn't even know what the equipment is.
She doesn't know where the equipment is. But more importantly, this guy, Mr. Garfield, has questions about her dredging equipment.
Yes. Well, there's problems with the Keogh plan, her stock options, and her foreign tax credit. Just so we make sure to cover how specific this episode is. So before we even get to the dredging equipment, it was all of those things. But yes, then he wants more information on the dredging equipment. There's not much to say. It dredges.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck does she need dredging equipment? Like, I'm sorry. What does David Warner need dredging equipment for? What is Warner Textiles?
Well, so they have that pig farm in Arkansas and the canning factory in Guam. I'm sure you might need to dredge things in Guam.
Sure, okay. Fair. I forgot about that. So he's got to write her He's got to write where he wants her. He knows that she's a phony job title. No idea what's in her tax return. She knows she's fucked. And this is when Mrs. Garrett enters with the strudel, quite more than a little late.
Yeah.
And he eats so creepily that it makes his crazy suit seem normal.
So she comes in. They come barreling in to basically deflect and distract from the fact that Blair is now realizing that she's being used as a pawn to commit tax fraud by her father, right? And when Blair, gets that like, oh God, Daddy's not such a good daddy. In comes Blair. In comes Mrs. Garrett and Tootie and Natalie. And Mrs. Garrett just goes, strudel! And this guy he's like, oh, I haven't really seen you at all. And I didn't expect this. He just takes some.
Yeah, with his hands, just like shoves it in his mouth. And it's like weirdly cut up for him.
Yeah. No, and he hands over her tax return, which is this giant stack of documents. And he goes, I think you should speak to your dad. You should speak to your father.
Yeah, and he gives her the opportunity to revise the tax return. I didn't know that was a thing.
Me neither. But
very generous.
So he says, you should speak to your dad. I'm coming back here to pick this thing up or something. And then takes another piece of strudel on the way out and just goes, wonderful.
Yes. I loved his wonderful. I made sure it was in the subtitles, and it is.
And so then he starts leaving, and Blair, suddenly realizing that she faces, 50 to 60 years in prison, goes.
Yeah, she does an I Love Lucy act out.
She goes, I want my daddy. And then Mr. Garfield from the doorway goes, so do we.
Yeah. I was like, please have more Mr. Garfield in this episode.
And his coworker, Normal.
Me and Yodi are going to be back here on Monday. Don't make me bring John. All right, so we're back in the cafeteria where we basically stay. Poring over Blair's assets, Nat reads a pig farm in Arkansas, cannery in Guam. She's got everything a girl could ever want, down to the caps on her oil wells.
So I wrote down in huge letters, why are these children looking at these documents?
It's really good.
Why is this their responsibility? Why are they doing this?
I mean, they're just trying to help out a friend. It's Blair's responsibility.
If you said to me, Britt, I would really like it if you could go over my tax return, I would say, no, please just go to H&R Block. I'm not going to look at that for you.
You're not qualified. However,
neither are they.
Natalie is. She knows everything about the IRS.
Only to be afraid of them.
Yes. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Anyway, don't worry. Mrs. Garrett says the oil wells are small ones. Does the tax return specify the size of the oil wells in relationship to other oil wells that the owner does not own? Because otherwise, how does Mrs. Garrett know what qualifies as an oil well?
Dominik, Mrs. Garrett is a licensed pilot. So I'm sure she knows about, the oil fields of Texas or whatever. She's seen Giant. She knows things about the oil. She's, did you know that she consulted on There Will Be Blood? I mean,
I did not know that. So Jill returns from a lovely day out with her father, box seats behind the home plate at the Yankees game where she got her oversized novelty baseball cap, I guess. Maybe
yeah.
she just has a small head, but that hat, she took it off the second she got in. And you knew she was like, I don't want to wear this hat. I don't look right. And they were like, sorry, it's the only one we have, and we need to say you were at a game.
It's so big. It's like
a beret.
No,
it's like a baseball cap.
so R.I.P. Alex Trebek, but presumably the SNL sketch where Norm Macdonald plays Burt Reynolds on Celebrity Jeopardy.
Of course.
And there's a moment where, he's just being a total troll and being an asshole to Alex Trebek, who's, played by Will Ferrell, who gets increasingly angry. But at one point, he just puts on this enormous foam cowboy hat that's like 4 feet long and 4 feet tall and 2 feet wide. And
it was like that.
Yeah, it was like that, but a Yankees hat.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. And Alex Trebek, Will Ferrell's just like, where did you get that hat? He's like, it's a funny hat. It's a funny hat.
Either way, Joe's con man father seems to have not learned his lesson yet because those seats were stolen, and Joe explains they had to go to another place. Either way, he didn't frame Joe for tax evasion, so...
Exactly. I was like, also, like, Joe's dad is a convicted felon. Like, what is she coming in here being all like, you know what? Family wouldn't do this to family. And it's like, your dad was in jail. We saw you go to visit your dad in jail. You were embarrassed by him.
Yes, embarrassed, but he did not pin his crime on his daughter.
Okay. Fair enough.
That is the big difference.
That's the distinction. Okay.
I do think that's a fair distinction. Anyway, so Blair snaps at her. Apparently she's humiliated by the pig farm. A mink farm is fine. Blood diamonds, absolutely sure. That's great. But pork, no.
So, okay, I want to pause here for 1 second.
Please.
So, clearly, Blair has never heard of the commodities market because pork bellies are extremely valuable and traded in the open market and worth way more than some fucking minks and mink coats. But the other thing that's hilarious about this, that made me think about this, is, so did you hear about how the coronavirus can be transmitted to minks? So it can be. But the coronavirus, like, your dog can't get it, your cat can't get it, but minks can. And so I don't know exactly how this was discovered, but, and this is a little sad, but it was discovered that the minks were carrying the coronavirus in Denmark recently. And so the Danish government ordered all of these mink farms to slaughter their minks. So they did. They killed them all. And then everyone was like, that sucks. That's, 2020 can suck a dick. And then last week, it was discovered that these mass graves of these supposedly dead minks are now full of zombie minks. They are alive and had to be re-killed. They crawled out of the grave being like, now we're pissed. We have the virus. You tried to gas us. So try anything, motherfuckers, because we're unkillable.
That's the saddest, creepiest story I've heard in a long time.
I know. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for my mink nightmares that I never thought I'd have. Anyway,
so again, that's what I thought. I was like, of course, Blair's just like, ew, pigs are gross. And it's like, pigs are extremely valuable and useful. And I don't even eat meat, but very tasty and are a publicly traded good. And she's just like, I want the soft animal to murder. Meh.
I get it. That's on brand. So we learned that Blair has not been able to reach her father, but he's apparently flying currently. Investigative pot stirrer Natalie has discovered that their holiday trip to Barbados was listed as a business expense. Now that is apparently one step too far. I do not know why it's one step too far, but it is clear that Blair is devastated by this news, trying to call it a mistake. But Natalie's like, no, here's 3 more extravagant vacations that you guys took listed as business trips. And if that's not clear enough, because let's face it, this episode about tax evasion is already a stretch, Joe decides to rub it in and say very, very explicitly, he listed your vacations as business trips. And then Tootie points out, she's not a tax expert, but that people go to jail for this sort of thing. To which
Not
Natalie
Blair.
gives Blair the tax returns as though her fingerprints on the actual printouts could make Natalie an accomplice. Real sensitive, Natalie.
Yeah.
So the phone rings and Natalie goes to get it. I wrote, which must really please Britt because Natalie is being obnoxious this episode.
But also, here's the thing. Also, is that so the phone rings. What? Who are we trying to get in contact with? Blair's dead.
Of course, you'd think Blair would answer that phone.
You'd think that Blair would be like, "Oh, no! It's probably for me. It's probably for me. I need to go speak to him immediately." No,
also,
she's there being like, "I have all these documents I need to go through."
Also, we know how far the phone is, like 2 feet away. Okay. We know how much I would assume that Mr. Warner is interested in talking to Natalie. Very little. However, Natalie takes her 2 steps to the phone and is then gone for so long that you can just, what the fuck were David Warner and Natalie Green talking about for the entire time that with everything that we're about to discuss?
Phone sex. That's Natalie's other job.
Yes. Okay. So Mrs. Garrett tries, while Natalie goes to get the phone, Mrs. Garrett tries to comfort Blair.
And she goes, Blair, you're not going to jail. And then Tootie, being a sociopath, says, of course she's not. Her father is.
Yes. And then Joe says, people like Blair's dad don't go to jail. They go to day spas on dude ranches, have prostitutes brought to them on the side of their lobster thermidors. Everybody's like, so all of this happens. And then Blair has a moment of realization. You know what? Nothing bad's going to happen. Her father will fix everything. Mm-hmm. And also, Natalie still on the phone with him.
I know. And they're still like, and so Joe, it's weird because it's like Joe's being like, yeah. These sort of white collar criminals, not like my pops, who would never lay any of these crimes on me. Not like my pops. These white collar criminals, they go to fucking summer camp. And then Blair's just but Tootie's like, yeah, but he's definitely going to jail. And they're just, as I always say, everyone is fucking piling on. As soon as Blair is just like, shit, I'm being
Joe
used by my
rightly points out that Blair's father is a prick who made Blair out to be a patsy, is screwing his own daughter over, which is a hard truth that Blair is desperate to avoid hearing. So it's like, shush, Joe.
Yeah, no, and then she's like, whoa, she's like, Mrs. Garrett's like, you're not helping right now. Like, this isn't good. Like, what
Joe says, your father's cheating the government. And Blair's like, no, it's exactly like what Mrs. Garrett does with the ketchup. So fuck off.
Yeah.
Ketchup, pig farms. What's the difference? Meanwhile, Natalie's still on the phone with Blair's dad.
So, here's the thing. Natalie's on the phone basically as long as this podcast lasts. She's on the phone for like 2 hours with someone's dad. I don't even know if I've been on the phone with my dad for 2 hours.
I definitely haven't in a while, but yes, she basically, Blair equates what Mrs. Garrett has done to what her father has done, and Joe's like, how dare you? And then Mrs. Garrett is like, no, you're fucking right. Yeah. You got my number. I'm a piece of shit. I'm turning myself in. I'm resigning. This series is over.
Right, and so this is what's so crazy about this, is that it's like, this is where I actually thought, if it's going to be sort of like, a lesson about like localized lesson for the Facts of Life team, the girls and Mrs. Garrett, that Mrs. Garrett is going to learn the lesson of, I should just ask for what I want rather than lie in my budget. I should advocate for fresh fruit and vegetables rather than ketchup from Mr. Parker. I thought that that's where we were going, rather than having Mr. Warner show up and hand Blair a check for $10,000.
Well, that is where we're going. But before that, Mrs.
No,
Garrett possibly inspires the Tootsie Pop owl by going, how many bottles of ketchup does it take before it's wrong?
Yes.
And even though it's for a good cause, it's still lying.
Yeah.
So in one passive-aggressive defensive line, Blair has lost fresh fruits and vegetables for the entire school.
Yeah.
So selfish.
So she goes, it's still lying. Am I glad I realized that? I'm going to tell Mr. Parker what I need, and I'm going to keep on fighting until I get it. And it's like, Mrs. Garrett, way to make this about you. This has nothing to do with you. And stop screaming about it. And then she gets a laugh on her exit.
Meanwhile, Natalie is still on the phone with Blair's father.
Yes. I honestly wrote down that, like, right when Mrs. Garrett screams about, asking for fruit and vegetables from Mr. Parker rather than ketchup, I wrote down, if she didn't win the Emmy this year, that's literal theft. This deserved it. It was so insane and, like, completely cuckoo bananas. And
it ends with give me broccoli or give me death.
It gets an applause break. People were like, holy shit, did you just see that? Oh my God, did I just watch Meryl Streep? Was she just here?
This is why they don't tell Mrs. Garrett when she's wrong. She just goes insane.
Yeah. Okay. And now that Mrs. Garrett is gone to balance her budget and look at some spreadsheets or whatever, Natalie comes back in after 20 minutes of telling Blair's dad, how hard it is.
And then I ate some snap peas, and then we had pumpkin pie for dessert, and that was Thursday. And then Friday morning, I had scrambled eggs. And
wait. No, I didn't have conversation. But I didn't have eggs on Friday morning. What did I have on Friday? What did I have? Oh, I remember it was Was it yogurt? I actually wasn't hungry on Friday morning, because I'd had a really big dinner the night before. Did I tell you about it? It's with the snap peas and the pie. It's like, what could Natalie Green have possibly been on the phone with?
Maybe because David Warner just barely knows his daughter. He was just, when she answered the phone, he was like, hi, honey. All right, let's talk. I'm so sorry about it. Goes through the whole spiel. And Natalie is trying to be like, I'm not. But she couldn't get it out because she has sitcom timing. And so eventually he figured it out. And then she's just like, I'm not going to bother him with that whole mix up. So
fair enough, maybe.
Anyway, apparently he's on his way up. There's nothing to worry about. Blair looks smug. Her father's here to take care of everything. Daddy's coming.
Daddy is coming.
Oh,
in
yeah.
Natalie's mouth.
J-O. Gross. Blair says that Joe just doesn't understand her father. And Joe's like, no shit. I wouldn't put my kids in jeopardy for money. It's like a mic drop moment. And one person claps and then realizes there's more to the scene. And then they stop. But there isn't more to the scene. They were like, don't. This isn't the end of the episode. Just don't. So it's like one clap, and then they're like, wait, was that a clap moment? Either way, they were just probably still riding the high of when Mr. Garfield did that zinger about sending Blair's dad to jail, and they all applauded. Either way, He stopped, and we're in the next scene, and we're still in the cafeteria.
Yeah, but we're with Mrs. Garrett, who is
making the umpteenth unappreciated flower arrangement for a girls' school cafeteria that no one ever needed for the millionth time.
Yeah. And she's dressed up with nowhere to go and has a flower in her mouth, in between her teeth, like she's going to do, like, the tango or something with Antonio Banderas. And, he's going to chew it out of her mouth. But it's like some yellow, lame, flower. And in comes this, very, dashing, gray-haired gentleman in a suit.
The man of the hour, Mr. David Warner.
And Mrs. Garrett chews on her on her flower and is like, sorry, I can't help snacking between meals.
I very much enjoyed that joke.
That wasn't a joke.
I thought it was. I laughed at that. The pink and blue of her outfit is very off-putting.
Yeah. Everything
It's
about it was
very
off-putting.
weird combination.
This whole episode was bizarre. It was I actually, I texted you after I watched it being like, absolutely like a bizarro episode. Like really weird. Because I like the idea of Blair learning that her dad is neglectful and buys her love. But did it need to go down the route of tax fraud?
Why not?
Well, because then that opens up a larger can of worms, which is Blair might go to jail, and so is her dad. Is this ever mentioned again? What about her canning factory in Guam?
Yeah, we do have a season there.
In Guam.
Yes.
It is a U.S. territory, so.
The cans of life. Let's talk
Cans. This really was a can-heavy episode.
It was. Let's talk about Nicholas Coster.
Yes. Blair's dad.
David Warner, yes. He was born actually the day before my birthday, but in 1933. So, that's Sag.
How old you are. Isn't that how old you are?
33, yes.
1933, right? So
yeah, I'm somewhere between 19 and 33. Anyway, so gasp. This guy's actually British.
Oh.
Yeah, nice American accent.
That answers a question because I was like, what is this man's accent?
There you go. But his accent is really soap opera accent because he's best known for 9 years and 586 episodes as Lionel Lockridge on Santa Barbara.
Ooh.
Yes, but his dude is still rocking. He just did the 63 episodes of The Bay. He just wrapped up as recently as last year. And he got 2 movies released this year, including The Last Exorcist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's got over 170 credits, including Chancellor Stevens on Third Rock from the Sun, which I just found out about now and it's blowing my mind because it's a Facts of Life Third Rock from the Sun connection. And that makes me extraordinarily happy. He, like everybody else involved in this episode, did one Who's the Boss. He also did a Murder, She Wrote, and he was in the movie Big Business where he played Hunt Shelton. Obviously,
I will say this. At this point, character. I think that I've done an episode of Who's the Boss.
I would not be surprised.
I think I did.
I've done an actor from Who's the Boss. No. His career started in the late 50s, early 60s. We have 4 more episodes with him, so he's got 5 total. So we will revisit his massive IMDb again in the future. Feel free to look him up yourself. He's got a lot. We'll talk about it at some point, but I mean, oh my God, this guy has a lot of credit. So Blair takes her dad into the lounge where he asks if she's okay. And
well, he goes, "Hello, princess." And then he says, how are you, princess?
Your impression of him is not very good.
It's like, hey, princess. It's my fault. I should have left this in the hands of others. It's like he's speaking like with a lot of breath and a lot of H.
Soap opera acting.
Okay.
Yes. And so he tries to patronize her, calling her sweetheart and such. And she asks how this happened. And he explains, oh, it wasn't him. Classic. He left it in other people's hands. They fucked it up. Super convenient. Mm-hmm. Blair whines about how she felt like a criminal, and he tries to make light of the situation, laughing about how they'd have to forward her Neiman Marcus catalog to Sing Sing. Yeah. White privilege. So funny. Have you noticed?
And she's like, the taxman made me feel like a common criminal. And like Blair's like, I don't like this. He's like, what do you want me to do? Give all my money to the IRS? And she's like, no. obviously not. Jesus Christ, you know? And then she's like, no, but this can't happen again. You know, this can't happen again. And he's like, well, it won't, honey. It can't. I'm making you a corporation. Another laugh.
Yeah, well, that one was funny. I thought that was good. Have you noticed that they always like to have resolutions in the lounge? It's like, oh, do I have to talk to the old lady who bought me as a sex slave and tell her I'm not moving in with her? Let's go to the lounge. Oh, do I have to confront my dad for the sitting in the sex section of the finest restaurant in New York City? Let's go to the lounge. It's getting ridiculous at this point.
Also, should when Blair is teaching the developmentally challenged man how to paint, should we have a big blow up there? Yes, in the lounge.
Yeah, they love the lounge for that.
Mm-hmm.
Blair wants to bitch about her tax return, but he's like, they're just little details, like her dredging equipment. But she's basically saying, without saying it, if you had clued me in on this, I would be down to lie for you, but you didn't, and so you made me look like a fool. It's springing it on her and not ever calling her back when she's getting audited. It just seems like bad business anyway.
Yeah, she's basically saying, like, she's like Ivanka, being like, Dad, you should have told me. I would have been cool, you know, if you just let me know. Instead, you're treating me like you treat Don Jr. and Eric, and I don't like it.
We don't have to talk about those people anymore.
I know.
I'm just thrilled about that. So anyway, she exclaims, exasperated, that she owns a cannery in Guam. She doesn't even know where Guam is. He explains it's a Pacific island, but she doesn't care.
No.
He thinks he should, because the cannery is a great investment. It loses them $50,000 a year, which in turn gives them a lot of money. And while it's annoying, that makes sense. It is crazy that they put that in this episode.
Honestly, like, I feel like I should have done a little bit of like research in terms of like 1981 Guam canning factory IRS scandal to see if this was based on something in reality, because the specificity of it is so bizarre.
It's so bizarre. They didn't even give Nancy a fucking last name for like 12 episodes.
They could have, and here's the other thing, is that they could have explained this in a different way that was just way more clear, but they're like, no, I'm going to use the 24 minutes I have with these preteens and teenage girls in 1982, and they're going to walk away from this episode and they're going to want to be IRS auditors.
That is the lesson.
That's the lesson.
Now I'm learning the facts of life.
This is the facts of life. We're churning out civil servants who want to audit rich people.
He justifies all of his behavior by saying it's her fault. He has to support her and his ex-wives and their ex-husbands for some reason. In his tax bracket, you have to make $10 to keep $1. This is where he pressures her and says, you want me to give all my money to the IRS? And she's like, no, of course, but this can't happen again. You have to be better at cheating the government. Who is this episode for?
Is Donald Trump?
I guess. This episode is why we had the presidency that we had for the past 4 years. He has decided to incorporate his daughter.
Yeah.
She's going to be called Princess Inc. So he clearly got the point of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like she's trying to take him out of the lounge. She's like walking him, leading him out, because she's like, you know what? Fuck you, Princess Inc. This isn't ready to be resolved. Let's get out of the lounge of resolution.
Yeah, and he's like, so you're going to be Princess Inc. I'm not going to call you Blair anymore. I've actually already formally changed your name to Princess Incorporated. Your
social security number is a P.O. box, as is your vagina.
So I am dehumanizing you. And she's just basically like, I just want to be your daughter. Can I just be your daughter? Not like a business transaction. And,
And his response is, what do you want me to do? Take all the money out of your name? Like, it's incredulous.
Yeah. But again, she's like, can we just, everything we do seems to have a price tag attached to it.
Well, hang on. Before that, he says his response is, "This is a very complicated financial structure I've created, ... to defraud the government, and I won't let my daughter come in and ruin it." Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a crazy thing to
but
put in the sitcom. And it's
of
also
course,
crazy to just gloss over. It's shocking that he had that
because here's the thing, is that it's one thing if she's like, you write off my birthday trips as a work expense. And that's giving me the signal that I am work to you.
Well, that is her final nail in the coffin for some strange reason, even
Well,
here in this scene. Before as well, that is the thing that really bothers her. And it's like, why are you letting that bother you so much?
Well, right, exactly. Why are you letting it bother you so much? And also, Blair Warner's entire life has a fucking price tag attached to it.
Yeah, and
what
she's
is she
normally
getting on this
quite
high horse
comfortable
about
with
this shit.
I don't understand it. Apparently, this scheme has taken him years to build, and she couldn't possibly understand it. But she asked him to explain it. Like, why are the vacations listed as business trips? This is not egregious. You went on vacay with your dad. He's not absent. That's great. However he pays for it, you shouldn't be concerned. But even the one on her birthday? Oh, no, not the one on the birthday one. Oh, wow, that's just one step even further.
Exactly. So if he takes a business call when they're on vacation in Barbados, he can write the whole thing off.
He explains it just had to do with deducting the cost, not deducting his love for her. And she's like, yes, it does. But I'm like, how? She explains that everything they do seems to have the price tag on it. It's like, welcome to life, dude. And also, you've been there. You are a price tag. That's what you are on this show. And he rightly says everything.
I feel like she basically, she literally looks like, everything on her is expensive. You know what I mean? So, like, yes, everything is in your life has a price tag attached to it. If it weren't so gauche, she would leave the price tag still on so everyone knew how much her fucking mink coat cost.
Yeah, we learned what her allowance was.
Yeah.
So he rightly says everything he's done has been for her, so what's her fucking problem? But then he goes too far, trying to get her to pity him. This reminds him of the convo he had with her mom before she asked for a divorce. No reaction, so he tries again. Am I really such a bad dad? She didn't say that, dude. Get over yourself. Figure out how to parent. Stop being an asshole.
But Blair's just sort of like, well, yeah, again, I mean, I feel like we're watching a scene of two emotionally stunted people who are primarily motivated by money and rich, like anything, luxury and money. And we're watching them be like, but you don't love me. And he's like, I give you all this money. That's what love is. And she's like, oh, well, actually, that's true. That's the lesson you taught me. So, and it's like, but they're not puzzling it through enough so that it's like she's seeing this being like, but I don't understand. Would you take me to a baseball game?
Yeah, speaking of puzzling, that was a very odd choice.
Because,
Joe went to a baseball game, so that must be good.
So would you go to a baseball game? Because that's the only identifiable thing that I understand that dads do. Going to a baseball game.
And then he says, she says, the two of them sitting on the 50-yard line. And he's like, that's football. She's like, then let's go to a football game. And then he's like, how about the Super Bowl? Because that's not for a long time. And then I don't have to go anywhere with you. She's like, yeah, let's go to the Super Bowl next week. And I picked the Super Bowl because I hate you. And it's a long time away. And I'm hoping you'll forget. She wants to do something next week. She doesn't care what it is. And he's like, no.
He's like, wait, actually, no, I'm busy next week. Yeah, I'm visiting.
And the week after. She didn't even ask. She was just like, just in case you wanted to hang out then. Also then.
Yeah.
So she gives up. But in that way where you give up when you stand in the room with the person and just turn your back to them.
Yes.
And just stand there with no way out, like against the wall.
Yeah.
So he tries to change the subject and offers her allowance for the month. And she takes it because she's complicit, and this is their cycle.
Yeah, I mean, this is a cycle of abuse. But like again, why should if he's going to use her name and send her to jail, she should get that filthy $10K per month if she's his accomplice.
Yeah, I mean, if this is what she has to deal with, that's the price that he has
And
to pay.
and at this point, she could buy those box seats at the Yankees game for Joe, and eat Joe's box.
Yeah, that sounds like the perfect night.
Yeah.
So yes, he's off to be an asshole boss rather than an asshole father. He kisses her, tells her she's always been his best girl, and he leaves. She looks like she's gonna puke, and this is where Joe comes in and says, "Hey, what's that?" Which is such a weird way to say, "What's that check in your hand?" or "What have you got there?" But it's like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
So, but it's only so Blair can go, "It's my father." So poignant, so real.
Yeah.
So odd.
Absolutely. What's so amazing about this is that this was so poorly constructed, so oddly written, and it's actually only the second worst thing that Paul Haggis has ever made.
Are you sure? I bet we could find some worse things. He's got quite a catalog than this.
So it goes Traffic, then this.
Well, he didn't do Traffic, so that's good.
I thought he did do Traffic.
No, he did Crash.
Oh, Crash. Sorry, Crash. Car-related movies, whatever. Crash. Yes, that's awful.
Oscar winning.
Yeah. Have you're a big fan of Sandy B?
Yes.
You've always always like to achieve having seen every single work in their filmography. So I assume which is why, and you love Sandra Bullock.
Yes.
So which is why you were like, I need to watch Gravity because she's in it, even though I hate space movies.
Yes, I watched Crash when it came out.
And
I don't even remember it. I remember Sandra Bullock's part was she was like no nonsense businesswoman.
Yeah, uptight.
That is what I recall from the entire movie.
I think she's like an uptight person who's mean to her staff.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
I watched the Sandra Bullock parts when it wasn't Sandra Bullock attention.
Really? You weren't paying attention
sure
when
Matt
Dillon fingers Tandy Newton?
None of that rings a bell.
Oh, okay.
I wouldn't be able to recognize Tandy Newton if there was two girls in my house and one of them was her. They were like, guess.
50-50.
50-50. I would have to guess. I have no idea. And I've seen Crash. Anyway, I think this was a weird podcast for a weird episode.
Yeah, super weird.
Anyway, how's your Keo cycle or whatever that was?
My what?
The Keo plan?
Oh, you mean my canning factory in Guam?
Sure.
It's good, actually.
Oh, good.
I have a lot of miscellaneous equipment stored there, along with a lot of receipts.
Is your husband going to dredge you tonight?
Yeah, very much.
Using his equipment?
Deep, deep dredging.
Well, all right. My lovelies, thank you so much. What do we got coming on deck? Do you know?
Oh, God.
Shall we check before we say goodbye?
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. The next episode we've got coming up. Oh, God. Not the best. Oh, interestingly, we're recording this episode on December 2nd. And the episode that we covered tonight aired on December 1st.
Wow. We are so on top of things.
December
As
1st,
usual.
38 years ago.
As usual at Facts of Facts HQ, we are very much on top of things.
Yes, Facts of Facts Towers, we call it here.
Yes.
So next week's episode is, remember when season 3, episode 22, you remember that one, right? You can recall that?
Yeah, of course.
That's the Academy.
The raping in the van? No.
What? That was the backdoor pilot where we went to the Academy, the Boys Academy.
Ah, yes.
Lots of clicking of heels. Well, they're going to try that again.
Oh, great.
Yes. So this one's called The Big Fight. And yeah, see how that goes.
So you're saying to me 100% confirmed that we never see the IRS agent ever again?
Not on this show, no. I
That's
am
too bad.
sorry. I am so sorry. But we've only got 3 more episodes until we've moved into 1983.
Oh, wow. What a
Exciting time to be alive, I know.
very exciting. I would have been, less than a year. So
Honestly, this season does have one of my probably my favorite episode of all time.
and that was this one about the tax fraud.
It is the second to last episode of the season. It's called Take My Finals, Please. Anyway, until then, well, not until then. We got the big fight coming up next. But until then, thank you so much for joining us. Stay lovely, y'all. Stay safe. Wear a mask. And, like and subscribe. Have I ever said that before?
No.
All right.
Like and subscribe to Princess Inc.
Yes, please do. Until then, bye-bye.